So the Habs needed to address their needs down the middle, and they did that. And then they went out and signed their former first-round pick, Cole Caufield, to an entry-level contract. It was a pretty crazy week. Pretty crazy week indeed for a team that didn't even play a single game. Well, guys, welcome once again, to another beautiful episode of Shooting the Shit. I'm your host, as always. I'm Lansman, and on the other end, as usual, I'm joined by my buddy Z. What's going on?
Happy Sunday, Davey. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Hey, man, you called it. You called it right here on our channel just a couple days ago. You said the Habs needed to go get a center down the middle, a depth center, and then they went out and got Eric Staal. I mean, I was shocked. I was happy. What were your thoughts?
I was happy too. I mean, I expected them to as I mentioned, like I thought that was something that Bergevin wanted on the team because we've discussed numerous times. The Habs are young. They're young down the middle. So it's also it's not also an issue of are they as talented as Toronto and Edmonton and Winnipeg down the middle, because they're not. But the bigger problem is they're also very young down the middle. And I thought he would bring in a veteran to kind of mentor them and also just kind of isolate them in the defensive zone, help with face-off wins. I didn't see Eric Staal as the target necessarily. I thought he'd be looking more at a Nate Thompson type, but I mean, Eric Staal, it's a good grab for the Habs, man. I mean, I know he struggled in Buffalo this year, but who hasn't? And if you look at his previous years in Minnesota and Carolina before that, he's still a good player, man, even though he's been in the league a long time. So I like it.
You know what? I'd have to agree. I mean, this was a move that caught me off guard, like you said. I mean, we thought, okay, we need to get experience down the middle. Okay, that's fine. There's a lot of centers out there that are available. But when you get someone who is a proven winner, he does have a high resume. He's played over 1,000 games and he's got over 1,000 points. This is something that is overlooked and something that the Habs don't usually go out and get. They usually go get the depth guy with the experience, but not necessarily the points and the resume to boot. And he's a Triple Crown winner. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, he's a great asset, I think, for this team, especially because they are young down the middle. So on top of the fact that I think he's an improvement in terms of Jake Evans, nothing against Jake Evans. Wonderful story for the Habs. The kid, he's a 7th-round pick. He's not supposed to make the NHL, and he did. So I got nothing but love and time for Jake Evans. But when your number 1 center and number 2 center are 20 and 21, and you got Danault in there who's been great, but Danault also is 26, 5 years in the league or something like that. Bringing in a guy like Staal is really fills in a great need, because you're mentoring these guys with a proven winner, like you mentioned. And really, even from an analytical point of view, other than this year with Buffalo, he's always been a positive, above replacement level player. Sometimes extremely above, one of the best in the league, obviously when he was younger and at his peak. But even, like I mentioned, throw this year out the window, Minnesota, he was still above replacement. I mean, this is a guy who still has gas in the tank. It's a great addition to that for the Habs.
Yeah, you know what? He brings a wealth of experience. He brings a wealth of the veteran leadership, which you talked about. He will help the team. He'll help them grow and learn what to work on. I mean, he knows the true polars. He knows the polar of winning when he won the Cup in 2006 with Carolina, but he also knows playing Buffalo this year, who has lost 17 in a row. I'm thinking that he will actually definitely help the team in so many ways. And like to Jake Evans' point, I don't think he's done. I think he's going to go to Laval and just grow and learn, because no offense to Saul, I'm very happy with the acquisition, but I don't think he's got too many years left. He's 36.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even when he decides to maybe hang up the skates, when he does, we have room to bring up the other players like Evans.
So. Yeah, no, for sure. Listen, Stahl's a guy who could come in and he can play enough minutes on a team like the Habs, who rolls 4 lines, right? The Habs don't have a Matthews or McDavid line, which they play 20 minutes a game. They don't have those players, never mind that line. And they rotate guys on power play, right? They got, none of their players are playing full 2 minutes on power play. And so when you have that kind of system in place, having a guy like Staal in there, it allows you to play that guy 10 to 15 minutes a game, whereas you were playing Evans less than 10. And I think he's a big improvement, and he can slot in on the power play if there's an injury. He's still a guy who's got great offensive vision, good offensive skill. Defensively, he's a little bit wonky in his older age. A lot of older players tend to get that way. But you can't replace his IQ. You can't replace his smarts. And I just think he's a good addition to a team that's looking for depth and looking for veteran leadership down the middle because they don't have it.
Absolutely. He will definitely help with that asset too. I mean, he also brings something that I know he's going to say sounds silly, but he brings size. You know, he's not a tiny kid. You know, like the problem with bringing in free agents in the past for the Habs has always been getting people that are undersized, and we've always been joked about being the most undersized team in the league. But he's 6'4". You know, he's one who will take the body. He'll still hit. You know, he's not shy about doing that. So, anyways, on a switch of gears, though, I mean, we'll talk about Staal probably more in detail soon. But talking about size, they went out and they signed their former 2019 first round pick Cole Caufield to an entry-level contract yesterday. That was a very good move for them to do, and it was the right time. What do you think?
Well, listen, he's a top prospect in their organization, right? Now that Romanoff is on the team, Caufield's a guy who had to be signed. It's not a Jordan Harris-like situation. This guy's done everything he can. He's probably going to win the Hobey Baker Award for top player in college. He broke Austin Matthews' goal record for the USA, league or team or whatever that is. This is a guy who number one skill is putting the puck in the net. This is what he's going to be known for in the NHL if he succeeds at a high level. What is the Habs' fundamental issue and has been for a long time? They're a team that struggles to score. They're a team that struggles to finish. They don't have finishers. This is the best opportunity for them to have a finisher in their team that really, I can't even remember the last time that Stéphane Richer, when he was potting 50 goals. I mean, we're going back to the late 80s right now. Yeah. And Caufield has that potential. I think, there's how it is with Canadiens fans. We're a rabid bunch. We can be very irrational. And I think, some of the expectations on this kid are going to be somewhat unfair. But I do think, just when I kind of slow down and really think of it and analyze him as a potential NHL player, he does have goal scoring capability at a high rate, especially on the power play. Yeah, I don't know how he's going to turn out 5-on-5, but it'll be fun to watch this kid on the power play.
Well, like you said, it's a need that needs to be addressed. It's the goal scoring, the speed, something that we need desperately down the middle to help us go far further down the line. I'm excited to see what's going to happen. Like you said, nervous. It's a small kid coming into a big market. There's going to be a lot of pressure on him. Will he live up to the expectations? He's going to start in Laval, and then who knows?
Well, I think it was a good move. It was a good move to send him to Laval. Let him get used to the system down there because they play the same system as the Habs. Joel Bouchard's done a fantastic job down there, prepping players, rehabilitating players. And then I will be shocked if we don't see him on the big club by the end of the year. I just think that the Habs they might need him. They might need a guy who can score goals. And if he goes down to Laval and plays well in the AHL over the first, 5 to 10 games, it'll be a matter of time before he's up with the club, at least occupying a spot on the third line and more specifically on the power play.
Okay, well, I'll just one last part. So do you think he'll get a hat trick and a shootout winner in his debut against the Leafs?
No, he's no Ryan Poehling there, but yeah. He'll do more than that against the Leafs, hopefully, in his career. But yeah, that was a fun introduction to Poehling when it happened.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, we actually have guys a special addition to our show for this week's episode. We're bringing in a Leafs fan. So without further ado, he is the host of the Squadcast. He's the producer of the Rod Pedersen Show. We'd like to give a warm welcome to our our good buddy, Clark Munroe. How's it going?
Hey, thanks for having me. This is fun. I just tuned in for your last couple minutes, and I'm trying to figure out what you're talking about. I think this is off to a good start already.
Well, we want to make you feel comfortable. So, I mean, we want to make you feel comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. I see.
We want to make you feel comfortable.
Hey, that's fantastic. You're making me feel right at home. You got the Ducks jersey in the background too?
Well, you know what? This is the longest I've ever worn a Leafs jersey, and it's the longest I'm ever going to wear because I don't need this shit.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Sorry.
Are you burning yourself up there? I feel like that's like blasphemy for Canadiens fans to do that.
Oh, no, I was just getting the toilet paper warm. Ooh!
Fantastic.
So, Clark, you're a guy. I met you on TikTok. Sounds funny to leave, but yeah. And I mean, you do a lot of hockey content. You record about hockey. You're based out of Saskatchewan.
Yeah, it's welcome to 2021 with TikTok. We're connecting through TikTok nowadays.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, so you talk hockey on a daily basis. Your TikToks are all about hockey. You are a diehard Leafs fan. Nobody's perfect, but I mean, like, what are your points? What are your thoughts with your team this year? They've been a little bit of an up and down.
Oh yeah, it's an interesting one because when they were sitting up top like 9 points ahead of, I think it was the Oilers or maybe it was you guys at the time, whenever that was, and everyone was talking about how the Leafs are just in a weak division, so you don't take them too seriously. But all throughout the season and even up until the last couple of weeks, I've never felt great about the Leafs team overall. I mean, yeah, they won games, they found ways to win games, and good teams do that, but nowhere throughout the first, I'm going to say 20 games or so, did I be like, oh yeah, you know what? I feel really good this year, like way better than average. And I obviously, winning games is great, like I said, and their record stood out and was great, but their goaltending wasn't all that great. Their team defense was suspect at times, even though it's been way better than it's been. Trust me, it's been way better than it's been. But they had guys going through hot and cold streaks, and I wasn't feeling all that great. And then the Edmonton series happened, and everyone says, "Oh, look, they're absolutely dominant." And I'm like, guys, I still don't have a great feeling. Like, they had 3 really good games, but it could turn around at any time. And then look at the streak they go on, where I think they lost like 5 out of 7 or 6 out of 8 or something along those lines. They finally just had a decent game last night against the Oilers again. Jack Campbell's doing well in the absence of Frederik Andersen, but it's been a weird year. It's been playing with my emotions because there's times where I wanna feel good, but I just have this like weird feeling. And as Leaf fans, we're cursed, or we have this like hex on us where nothing good can happen, because look at the last 20 years. But yeah, that's kind of where I've been at this year. It's been a really weird year, and we'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks, and if they can kind of settle into some sort of way of playing. But I don't know. We'll see.
Interesting thoughts. I mean, you're right. I mean, it's always weird because as Habs fans, as I am, as Z is, we like to joke about the Leafs because the Leafs are the team to joke about. 54 years without a cup, it's something to be like, ha, ha, ha. But in the same sense, we're nothing special. We haven't won in 28 years. I mean, it's not 54, but it's still like we're not even coming close. We've come close once, and then Chris Kreier took out Carey Price.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because growing up in Saskatchewan, we're in the middle of Winnipeg, Calgary, Edmonton. So most people here, they either have deep-rooted hatred towards the Canadiens. Well, everyone here has a deep-rooted hatred towards the Canadiens. But you're either a Toronto fan, or you converted yourself because everybody back, I'm going to say the 50s and 60s, 70s. They all had one channel, and the Leafs and the Canadiens were on every Saturday night. So, that older generation is either Leafs or there's a few Canadiens fans. And then the next generation started breaking off. So there was some Oilers, Flames, Jets fans, and the Jets went away. So, people started just focusing more on Edmonton, Calgary. So for me, growing up as a Leafs fan, like I was kind of weird. Like, I only became a Leafs fan in like 98, 99, that area of time. Before that, I was a Ducks fan. That's why I gave you a shout out for the Ducks jersey on the wall. Paul Carrillo is my guy. So like, growing up as a kid, up until you're 9 years old, you got the Mighty Ducks movies to be proud of and all that stuff. But I switched over to a Leafs fan because I played on, there you go, Paul Carrillo, baby. I switched over to a Leafs fan when I was like 9 years old because I played on a team in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. That's where I grew up. Moose Jaw, home of the Warriors.
Yeah.
Home of Joel Edmondson played here in his junior days. I now live in Regina, so now it's Regina Pats territory for me. But I played on a team called the Moose Jaw Maple Leafs. I was number 32 for some reason, and Steve Thomas was on the Leafs at the time. And I made this connection. My coach forced me to like the Leafs. My best friend was a Leafs fan at the time. So I switched, and I've been a Leafs fan ever since about the 98-99 season. So, it's been weird, but I've never been able to really be proud of being a Leafs fan because they've never been that great, especially here where everyone's Oilers, like I was saying, Oilers, Flames, Jets. So I never really had a ton of Leafs gear. This is my first Leafs hat I've had since I was 13 years old. I have one jersey. It's a Matthews jersey. So it's like a weird area to be like a proud Leafs fan, but it's finally starting to come around.
Okay. All right. Well, I know that Z and I were talking about the trade deadline because it's coming up in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
We went out. Well, the Montreal Canadiens went out and they went and got Eric Staal. We were proud of the move because we needed a depth center. It was actually funny. I don't know if you caught our last episode, but Z had actually called it. And then we inserted it because it happened. What do you think the Leafs need to move forward?
Well, first off, I was just talking we had a little group, I don't know if you want to call it a Zoom call or whatever, after the Leafs game last night with a couple of Leafs guys who have their own show called Offside Hockey Talk. So that's what they were doing. But I joined in, and Eric Staal was a big part of the conversation. So just if you don't mind, I'd like to jump in and just I think any day of the week you can get a half retained Eric Staal for a third and a fifth round pick. You do it. That's a great move for the team overall. I'm wondering if this isn't part of something bigger. And I know your guy, Marc Bergevin, your guy, he likes to come out and say, nope, I'm not doing anything. But I don't believe that for a second, guys. Not 1 second.
It's a lie. Trust me, it's a lie. He says it's not going to happen. He's not going to make a move, and a day later makes a Staal move. He also said, I'm not going to trade PK. A day later, he traded PK. Trust me, we know his resume and we know his fibs, and they come out and storm.
Yeah. So I'm looking at adding Eric Staal. I heard you guys talk about Cole Caufield. I see you sign him for a 3-year entry-level contract. Now, here's the deal with 3-year entry-level contract. I heard you guys maybe talking about sending him down to Laval for a little bit. He has to burn a year to do that this year. So I don't think you sign a guy like him to burn a year without putting him right onto your roster, or at least within a couple of weeks, because you're losing a whole year of his first pro hockey career, his first year in his pro hockey career. So I don't think you do that without, immediate plans to bring him up to the roster. So for me, now I'm looking at their roster, and you guys have 3 or 4 lines of guys, plus some depth guys like Joel Armia. Where does he fit into the roster now? Arturi Lehkonen, where does he fit into the roster now? Especially with Eric Staal coming in, Cole Caufield coming in. So there's a couple of guys like Armia and Lehkonen. Those are $5 million worth of players with no role, or little to maybe a 4th line role, or maybe a 3rd line role. Victor Mete asked for a trade earlier in the year. So I'm starting to wonder now, are these pieces going to come together? And maybe you guys bring in a Matthias Ekholm or somebody along those lines. And there's so many more little avenues that you can take with that. But I'm very curious. I think the Canadiens are going to be way busier than anyone's giving them credit for. In terms of the Leafs, I can get into that too. I'm not too sure exactly. It's kind of a mixed bag right now. Like, they kind of need goaltending. They kind of need defensemen. They kind of need forwards, but they have no cap room to do it. And I'm not too sure exactly what kind of angles they can get. Luckily, they have like an army of salary cap wizards who can figure stuff like that out and maybe make a couple of nifty little trades. But I'm very curious to see what direction, because I really don't know what the Leafs are going to be doing. They have needs. They can probably address a couple, but what ones they're going to go for, I'm not too sure, honestly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a big talk about the Mikael Granlund of the Predators going to Toronto. There's a lot of moves that could be made, but we'll see. I know that you talking about Lehkonen and Armia becoming disposable for the Habs. I should mention that Z is the biggest Lehkonen fan that you'll ever meet.
I was gonna jump in. Yeah, I think probably other than his mother, I'm probably the only person who ever bought a Lehkonen T-shirt on NHL.com. but but I actually, it's funny you mentioned that, Clark, because I tweeted about it recently because I think the guy the Habs would like to move, because you're right. They also have a salary cap issue, so I think bringing in Staal, I don't even know if they can bring in Caufield without having to move a guy either down to Laval or whatnot. But
Right.
the guy I think they'd want to move is Byron, but the problem is he's making $4 million a year, and nobody's going to touch that contract. So I think Lehkonen and Armia have some value somewhere in the league in terms of depth players, third line guys that you can throw on responsibly for penalty killing and whatnot. I think probably you're right. He ends up moving one of them. I don't know if he'll get an Ekholm. I think the ask for Ekholm sounds a little bit rich, a little rich right now, but you never know what happens closer to the deadline. But yeah, I think you're right. I think there's a couple more moves because I don't see Caufield staying in Laval for long. I think one of the reasons he's going down there is maybe just to quickly just kind of get him acclimated to the Habs system, and then he'll be up with the team once they figure out the salary cap issues. But I did want to ask you a question.
Be prepared.
It's an honest question because on Twitter, and Davey can attest to this, I'm a pretty neutral fan, and I follow a lot of Leafs guys, and I'm not a Leafs fan by any stretch of the imagination, but I appreciate good teams and good hockey, and a guy like Matthews, like if you love hockey, you want to watch a player like that on the ice. It's just a fun guy to watch. But one guy on the team is more polarizing than any other player I feel like in the league with a fan base is William Nylander. And I'm just curious what your take is on him, because I like the guy as a fan, who has no stake in the Leafs emotionally. I think he's a hell of a player at $6 million or whatever he makes, $6.5 million. But it seems the kid gets a lot of hate from Leafs Nation, and I just wonder what your take is on him.
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been pro Nylander since day one. I view the guy as a complimentary, probably fourth or fifth best player on your team type of guy. The problem with Nylander is I think he was getting forced into a role where a lot of people wanted him to be number one or number two. And when that happens, for a guy who needed to develop a lot in his own end, in the neutral zone, it just it put him in a bad light for some people who are kind of those diehard traditionalists. Whereas Nylander's kind of the new modern era type of player, lots of skill, not too physical, but very good with his stick. And he's developed a way to be effective in his own end. And if you watch him closely, and I did last year, I was very close on him because I wanted to determine whether I liked the guy or not. I was defensive of him for a couple of years there. And I was into a point where I was like, okay, is he right for this team or not? So last year specifically, I watched him very closely, and I saw a big change in his game where he was making a lot of those moves where he would kind of sneak up behind you, lift your stick and steal the puck, and then make it immediately go the other way. And he was never doing that before. He was very aloof before that, where he would just kind of float around, and he got way more engaged defensively. And I've seen that a lot this year too. So I think William Nylander has taken his game up a level where a lot of people still don't realize that, and they aren't watching it closely enough, especially the ones, and Nylander, like you said, he's polarizing. There's a group of people out there, and you probably follow them on Twitter, who don't care if he ever changes his game. They don't like him.
Right. So
that's just the way he is now. But a lot of people are kind of seeing how he has developed as a player. And I think it's $6.9 million that he makes a year. But I think for that amount of money, you won't find a ton of players who make that amount who are as effective as he is kind of all over the ice. I wish one day he would develop into a guy who maybe you could throw out on a penalty kill, like a skilled penalty killer. But I don't think that's going to happen yet or anytime soon. But I love the guy. I think he's great for the team. And if he can just hit the net more often, I think he'd have another 30, 40 goal season up his sleeve.
Do you think he's a guy who benefited greatly from the shift from Babcock to Keefe, or was it he just wasn't responding to kind of Babcock's a little bit more of an old school coach? Because there's been that kind of discussion in Montreal recently with guys like Kotkaniemi and Drouin who struggled or were inconsistent under Julien, who's also considered an old school coach and had success in the past. So there's kind of this aura around him versus essentially like Keefe, Ducharme's a fresh coach, with a pedigree, but never head coach before. Do you find like Nylander? Are there any other players that kind of jumped out at you? Because I know Justin Hall has been great this year. You mentioned I think the Leafs D has been improved, probably their biggest improvement in terms of why I think they're probably more of a legitimate playoff threat this year versus some others. Plus, they don't have to play the Bruins, which is a good thing. But
Always helps.
But yeah, no, just yeah. So was a shift to Keefe. Did that open up some of the players on the team?
I think so. Yeah, I think mentally more than anything. The biggest problem with Babcock, and I will give him some praise, I think the reason Nylander is as effective as he is now is because Mike Babcock forced him to do that. He basically told him to put his offense on the back seats for a good season a couple of years ago, which is why you saw a bit of a dip in his numbers. And he really worked on a lot of things that he wasn't comfortable with. And I think that's a lot of credit to Babcock on that. But what was going on with Babcock, and I think you saw it in there was a lot of frustration that season, was that there was just a major disconnect between Babcock, the players, and management. Nobody had the same mindset. Dubas would bring in a player and he would bench him. Or Dubas would say, hey, maybe use this defenseman in this way, Justin Hall, for example, and he would not play him at all. So there was just this disconnect between the entire organization because the head coach was thinking one way and everyone else was thinking another way. So by bringing Keefe in, I think it was more of everybody's on the same page and everyone feels like they know what they're supposed to be doing better. And management feels comfortable bringing in players that they think are better for the team because they know that their head coach is actually going to use them correctly. So I feel like that's the biggest thing. The shift from Babcock to Keefe is more that than anything on the ice. It's more of just the organizational, on the same page. Everyone's going in the same direction type thing. So I think for younger guys who might have been in a weird headspace, like Mitch Marner, Nylander probably is in that boat, maybe a Morgan Riley even. For guys who maybe were feeling a little bit weird, this was just a way to settle everybody down and say, okay, this is the way we're going. We should feel good about that. And you've seen a big shift. Like, I don't know what the exact record is off the top of my head, but Keefe's winning percentage since he got here is pretty high. And the team overall just seems like they're clicking better. So, I think that was the biggest shift from Babcock to Keefe.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can see that with a lot of teams is that when they make a move with their coaching, with their management, there's always that nerves, the anxiety of will they live up to their hope, to their expectations. When Montreal did this coaching switch in end of February, there was like Dominique Ducharme coming into Montreal with wealth of experience at the international level, but never at the coaching level in the NHL. And then you have Alex Burrows, who is a guy who's played in the league for many years, but has never been a coach until he came to Laval and then brought up to Montreal. They actually came in, and then there was a lot of expectations, and for the most part, they started to live up to those expectations. But I like the mentality that they do. Whenever there's a coaching change, whenever the management changes, they set them all down in the room, and they say, okay, guys, this is what we are working well with. This is what we need to work on. What can you guys bring to the table? Let's talk. Open forum. And then with the Habs, it was a lot of talk of we need to address our special teams. Okay, it was addressed. It was a lot of teams of the youth being a little bit anxious and not getting the minutes they deserved. They got the minutes they deserved. And then if they didn't, well, then they paid the price of sitting out or playing less minutes. So, I don't know. I think that the same can be said for the Leafs when they went from Babcock to Keefe.
I think one interesting thing, and I'm curious what Clark thinks, and it for the Habs and for the Leafs, because the Leafs have their own players. So the Habs obviously, Carey Price is a key component to their success, right? And that was something that was discussed after Julien was fired. Is we got to get Price going, right? This is our $10.5 million goalie, and we're not going to get into paying a goalie right now, but the fact of the matter is he's the star of the team. He's not playing well, and he eats up a big chunk of the cap. And then Price has been playing better in March, apart from the last game. The Leafs actually are starting to have that kind of discussion about John Tavares. Now, I'm not comparing the two, but Tavares is struggling this year. He makes $11 million a year. He's one of the highest paid centers, one of the highest paid players in the league, and he's struggling. And I wonder if, because Clark alluded to some of the struggles the Leafs have been having recently. Is there any discussion, amongst Toronto fans and media just about how to get Tavares going? Is it a serious concern, or is it like he's going to wake up? He's got a pedigree. He's a great player. But is that contract something that makes fans nervous, or are they thinking to themselves, no, John's going to be okay?
Yeah, that you nailed it. I think everything you said is pretty much exactly how a lot of us are feeling right now. But this situation that we're in with John Tavares, for me, it feels really good that this is one of our biggest issues, because the guy has 28 points in 34 games. He's having a bad year, according to a lot of people, which is probably true. Probably he would tell you that too. But I'm thinking 5 years ago, our biggest problem was that Brad Boyes was our first line right winger. And now John Tavares is almost a point per game, and that's our biggest problem. I love it, personally.
Clark, you're not allowed to have rational perspective as a Maple Leafs fan, okay? We're not allowed. Habs fans are the same. We're not allowed to be rational. But yeah, it's an excellent point, man. It's an excellent point.
Tavares for Eichel. I think they need to trade Tavares for Jack Eichel, and that's the.
Sorry, what? No. I mean, I'm sure Buffalo would welcome that with open arms, but.
Oh yeah. So I think the magic formula that seems to always work is just throw Mitch Marner on that line, and then it seems to spark everybody. But now, of course, with Matthews having 22 goals this year, it's kind of hard to take Marner off that line. But yeah, I totally know what you're getting at, and the whole John Tavares thing is really interesting, because last year, the first year he came here, he scored 47 goals, and everyone's like, okay, this is gonna work out really nicely. Last year there was a shift where they started putting him on all of the team's best lines as a defensive role, so as a shutdown kind of guy. And last night, if you watched any of the Leafs Oilers, every time McDavid was on the ice, John Tavares was there. So I feel like there's a shift, because before they would always have a shutdown third line. The first year Johnny was here, they would have a shutdown third line of whoever it was, and they would do the role of shutting down guys like, Nazem Kadri was here, so he would do the role of shutting down a guy like Connor McDavid and being that guy that was really annoying. Kadri got traded out. Kerfoot's here now, and he's not that kind of guy. So Keefe has been using John Tavares in a shutdown role ever since Keefe has gotten here. I think Babcock kind of was too last year. It seems weird that it was last year that Babcock was our head coach, but that's kind of where we're at. So Johnny's in a shutdown role, and I think he's doing really good. You saw it through the first, 20, 25 games where their goal differential was amazing, and John Tavares wasn't getting the point totals that you're used to seeing him getting, but he was doing an effective job as a shutdown center. He's just not getting any credit for it because the points aren't there, and he's getting $11 million. So you kind of want to see that. You want to see. No,
we know that story here. The story here in Montreal is similar, except I will say, like, Carey Price has had like 2 or 3 tough years in a row now. So this is not a guy who's just been bad for the last 10 games. He's going on a stretch of the tough 3 years, and there's a whole sort of, do you even pay a goalie that much? Do you even need to pay a goalie that much? I mean, that's a discussion that, Toronto's going to have soon, because I think Anderson's a free agent soon, and he makes $5 million.
Don't get me started. Started.
And I mean, you must be happy with the way Campbell's playing. You might be better off just rolling with Campbell, at this point. So, price is a separate discussion, and I don't really want to compare the two. It's just more of a, once these guys start making that much money, it becomes a tough thing for teams to swallow and fans to swallow. Like, look at Carlson in San Jose or Doughty in Los Angeles. Like, once those guys start dipping a little bit, it's a tough thing to justify when you're trying to build a team, especially now with COVID and the cap being flat and all that stuff. So yeah, it's a tough one, but you're right. Tavares is still an extremely useful. I'd love to have him, he'd be the number 1 center of the Habs like that. So it's not like the guy went into the tank. It's just an interesting discussion, because the Leafs have a couple of guys making more than 10 million, right? So.
Well, that's the thing. I think once you start getting over that $9 million mark in today's era, you're a guy who you turn into the guy who can't take a night off. You can't have bad nights, because if you have a bad night, the rest of your team is probably not doing all that great either. So that's where Carey Price comes in, especially because who's the next highest player behind Carey Price? Shea Weber, and behind that, Thomas Tatar, or is it now probably
Gallagher?
Who would be a Gallagher? Okay, so
But yeah,
one of the two.
But there's a big gap between Price and everybody else.
Yes.
Whereas in Toronto, there's 4 guys now who are at $7 million or higher. So it's the same in the sense that those guys are counted on every single night. So if they're not having a good night, everybody suffers. And Carey Price is a unique guy because goaltenders that's it. If your goalie's not having a good night, you're probably not winning most nights. When you're used to Carey Price getting Vezina nominations every single year, and then he goes down to a average human, it's a big difference. So we see that now if we bring in Freddie Anderson, for example, for his first 3 years of his contract, the guy dragged the Leafs to decent records every single year, dragged them into the playoffs, but he played 60 games every year, so he was exhausted by the time they got the playoffs and couldn't keep it up, which is why he has this proclamation that he's not a good playoff goalie. He's exhausted by the time they get the playoffs, and they've been playing juggernauts like Boston and Washington every single time when the Leafs had no business playing Washington or Boston in those first couple of years. And then last year in the Babcock year, we'll call it the bubble year, look at what he did in the playoffs after he had some rest. His numbers were amazing. The team just couldn't score a goal because the other numbers on the other team were even better. It's like he has this terrible reputation for being bad in the playoffs, and then this year rolls around, and it's the same argument when you're the highest. He's one of the highest paid players on the team. He's making $5 million a year, and he hasn't been good enough. So why? And I think the why is more of an important question right now than anything else, because something's not right with Frederik Andersen, and when you're making $5 million a year and you're not healthy, or something's going on in your head or whatever it is, you're useless. And it's hard to be useless when you're making $5 million a year. So
that's a fickle position too.
Yeah,
it's a fickle position. So once there's a little bit of doubt that creeps into a goalie's head, and it doesn't matter if you Carey Price or a rookie coming off the bench, it's tough. It's a tough thing to overcome, right? So, at least he's not making $10.5 million.
Yeah, look at Carter Hart. Exactly.
Yeah, man.
I agree. But look at Carter Hart over in Philadelphia. He comes in as a rookie and he's a world beater. Nobody can beat him. He's lights out. He's setting records. Philadelphia's building statues because that's what Philadelphia does. Nick Foles has a statue, for goodness sakes, in Philadelphia. So if he's going to have a statue, and then he comes out this year, has a few bad games, and now look at where Philadelphia is. He can't get out of the rut. So the goalies, man, goalies.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, you're alluding to it, is that if the player has a bad night, then everyone is on them. The problem with us living in Montreal is that we don't not only have the goalie who's played the most on our team, but we have the media that jumps on you like hounds, or we have the fan base that, back when the Halak had the great run in 2010, as soon as he had the great run, they're like, oh my God, get rid of Price. And then they got rid of Halak, and they're like, what? Why? And then Price became our savior. But now as soon as he's having shit numbers, people are like, get rid of Price. It's like, we don't have that capability to just bring in people.
It's what have you done for me lately?
Yeah.
And Toronto's the same market.
Suivant next, it's not a revolving door. We have a revolving door defenseman of our bottom pair defenseman, but that's something we can expand on. But when it comes to goaltending and having probably one of the best goalies of the past decade, aside from the past few years.
Not probably, definitely the best goalie of the past decade.
Yeah, not the last few years.
Just the last few years,
right?
The last few years, he's been meh, and that's the unfortunate case. Yeah. There's so many things to touch on. I mean,
go
ahead.
I just sort of want to say, I'm just curious to, Clark, just get kind of our final thoughts in here. Just predictions on the North Division, going forward. I mean, I had the Leafs winning the division at the beginning of the year. I thought Montreal would be a safe second, which is clearly not true. And now it doesn't look like the Leafs are even safe to win the division. So I'm curious, what do you think is going to happen here down the stretch? Where do you think the Leafs are going to finish? And, what's your take on Montreal? Do they make the playoffs? Do they finish second, third, fourth? Do they not make the playoffs?
The best thing about Montreal's situation right now is they have room to add. So you said they have a revolving door in their third pair. Like when we talked earlier about guys like Joel Armia, who's an upcoming unrestricted free agent, Lekkonen's an RFA. So I think between the two of them, if one of them's going, I think Armia's probably going. You have a little bit more control over a guy like Lekkonen. So if you have guys like that, and maybe that Victor Mete thing is still kind of hanging over everybody, they could easily go out and get a $3.5 million defenseman to fill in on that bottom pair if that's the way they need to go. So I still think the Canadiens have something up their sleeves, and the best part about their situation is they've got 5-6 games in hand on every team below them. So it doesn't matter who's above them right now. They have 5 games in hand on the Flames and 6 on the Canucks, and they're 2 points up on both of them. So I still think that they're in a really good position to make the playoffs. I think whatever was going on with them is I'm hoping behind them, because they were rolling. You guys know that they were rolling at the start of the year. So I would say, I would feel really confident right now that they would at least get the 4th spot, and then see what happens with the Oilers above them. But I think the Jets are going to end up winning the division. Honestly, they've been coming along strong. I know that they haven't been great. I'm just looking at the standings. They're 5-4-1 in their last 10, so that's not like overwhelming. But I think from top to bottom, they have one of the stronger teams altogether. And Connor Hellebuck is a god. Some nights. So I would say, I don't like to say that the Leafs are going to finish first. I always feel weird saying that. So I would think the Jets have a really good chance of leapfrogging the Leafs by the end of the year, depending on what happens at the deadline. But if the Jets go out and add a guy to fill in that role in that second pair of their defensive group, I still think that they would be easily the strongest team in the league, or in the division. Sorry. The Oilers are just so weird. Like last night, I'm just using last night as an example, but McDavid and Draisaitl get put on the same line again, and they can't be touched for an entire period. They're walking around, guys. They score a couple quick goals. It's 3-1, and I'm like, oh great, McDavid and Draisaitl are back. And then for whatever reason, the Leafs had an amazing third period, got a couple of goals, and then Matthews banks one off 3 guys and goes in. And there's Matthews monkeys off his back. So watch out now, because Austin Matthews is back. He hasn't been the same player in a couple weeks, but I always compare Austin Matthews to just a robot. When he's in the zone, literally nothing can stop him. He will go through anybody to score a goal. And that's what you said it earlier, but he's just so fun to watch when he's in the zone. Because
he's awesome, man.
I haven't seen a player, maybe Ovechkin, but when he wants to score a goal, the determination he has to just do it is unbelievable. It's different than a McDavid who can just do whatever he wants, because
Right.
Matthews isn't the fastest player. He has amazing hands. His shot's probably top 5 in the league, but when he wants to score, he flips a switch and you can just see it. He's the most powerful guy on the ice. He has the best shot on the ice when he's in that zone. So that's why I love Austin Matthews so much. But there's my little poem on why I like Austin Matthews so much.
You know what, I think Carey Price said it best. He said he loves watching Austin play, but from the bench, so he doesn't have to stop his shot.
Or from the TV screen.
Like goalies know. I mean, Matthews does such a good job of hiding the angle too of his stick before he releases. And it's such a fast release. A goalie usually has to guess where it's going to go. It's just an incredible. It's a skill. You either have it or you don't.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. Like, he can score from anywhere on the ice. Last night, for example, you saw him coming down the wing on Mike Smith, and Mike Smith fills up a lot of the net. He's one of the biggest goalies in the league, and he just strolled in on the left side, took a shot from like the face-off dot, and Smith had no chance, and it hit the crossbar. Austin Matthews leads the league in posts hit this year. And game-winning goals. How's that for a stat? But so he's been hitting posts so much this year, and it's just hilarious because when he does, they always zoom in on his face, and he's just like, just like, come on, I'm going to get it in there. So last night, for example, Smith is saving everything, right? You know, he was having an unbelievable night. Matthews is getting one-timers on the power play. He's getting shots from where he likes getting shots from. And the one specifically, they zoomed in on his face from the bottom of the circle, backdoor one-timer, and Smith somehow gets his hand on it between his hand and his pad, and it doesn't go in. And Matthews just dead-eye stares at him like, okay, this is it. This is ridiculous. And then he goes out and scores the overtime winner. But you know, so that's in terms of the division. I guess I kind of strayed off there, but the division itself, I think the Canucks have dug themselves into too deep of a hole. They're 6-3-1 in their last 10 though, but they've lost 3 in a row. So I originally had the Canucks finishing in a playoff spot before the year started, and then the year started, and that changed quickly. The Flames I had as a playoff team too, so they've been super weird. I thought they were going to be deep enough and balanced enough that they were going to be a team that could beat teams most nights, and they haven't been. So we'll see how Sutter changes that team for the rest of the year, because he's already calling Johnny Gaudreau in the media, and we're seeing him play his typical Daryl Sutter tricks. So we're going to see if that's going to work, or if they're just going to crumble. We'll have to see what the Flames end up doing. I would love to see the Senators kind of leapfrog one of these teams, because I think they're a team that can be scrappy enough that they could. I'm not saying make a playoff, get into a playoff spot, but even like 5th or 6th, I think it'd be hilarious if the Senators do that after nobody gave them a chance at all. I think.
Yeah, I mean, Davey and I have talked about the Senators because they got nothing. They got nothing to lose. Like almost everyone picked them to finish last.
Yeah,
and they got some good young players, right? And they're just having fun. You can watch. You know, they've given the Habs a bunch of problems this year. I think they beat the Flames 2 in a row right now, or 3 in a row.
Yep. They've beat every team in the division.
Yeah, they still want to go out every night and play a game. Whereas, like, you have a team like Buffalo who is just all but giving. But
oh boy,
I'm not going to open up the Buffalo can too much, because that's a shitstorm and a half.
I just feel bad for Buffalo.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
At least they got the Bills. Yeah. The Bills are good. The Bills are good now.
Yeah. So I would love to see the Senators. The Senators, to me, and just speaking from my experience, are what the Leafs were in Austin Matthews' rookie year. Like, they have a lot of guys who are fun to watch. They have speed. They have some skill, but they're hard to play against. They're getting goaltending some nights, and they get outshot a lot of nights, but they're still winning a couple of those games. It's like carbon copy of what the Leafs were five years ago at the start of their little rebuild shift. And I just think it would be great for the Senators to kind of keep winning a few games. And you know, the rivalries are always better when the Senators are at least respectable. So I would say I'm all for the Senators becoming a bit better in the near future, because it makes the Canadiens rivalry better and it makes the Leafs rivalry better. And it's no fun when there's nothing to play for in those rivalries. We saw it for years when the Leafs and Canadiens weren't relevant at the same times. That rivalry kind of slowly fizzled out, and just recently it's starting to kind of come back. And it's better when it's that way. So I'm hoping it's that way, because it's more fun, especially when the divisions are back to normal. When the divisions are back to normal and it's the Leafs, Sens, and Canadiens in the same division, when those 3 teams hate each other and it matters,
that's way more fun.
And you throw in the Bruins for good measure. Throw in the Bruins for good measure. Just saying.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah. Everybody hates the Bruins.
Everybody. There we go. We can unite on that one.
You know, Z and I may be Habs fans. Clark, you may be a Leafs fan, but we can all agree, fuck Boston.
Yeah, exactly. It's easy. We can come together over one thing. That's for sure.
That's for sure. So, just before we go, Clark, you know, you're a first timer to the show. Where can we find you if people want to look you up?
Yeah, sure. So on my personal Twitter, it's at Clark Munroe. So if you see my name, if the name pops up, just at Clark Munroe on there. I produce a show called the Rod Pedersen Show, so you can find us on a bunch of the different social media platforms. Just search the Rod Pedersen Show, and that's our show accounts, but I help run those as well. I host a show myself on Tuesday nights called the Squadcast, and the reason it's like a spin-off of my big show, but the Rod Squad was what our fans were called for the Rod Pedersen Show, so we broke off and did a little side show that I host called the Squadcast, with a guy named Max Ritz, who's actually a Nashville Predators contributor. So he's got a unique perspective, especially in Saskatchewan. Like, who's a Predators fan, right? But he's a diehard, and so he's now writing for a website called Preds Line, and he's a big Preds guy. So we have a great chat every Tuesday night, and it's not just hockey. We do a lot of Blue Jays talk, a lot of NFL talk, some CFL when it's happening, but it hasn't been since we started. So there's not that, but we kind of go all over the map, and we bring in guests, and it's a pretty fun time. So you can find me at Team RP Show on Twitter, because again, we're like a spin-off show of our big show. So at Team RP Show on there. And I guess, I don't know, everywhere else, just search the Squadcast or my name and you'll find me somewhere. TikTok's another big one, at Producer Clark. I'm having a lot of fun over there. I've been dropping my Olympic roster predictions over there. So I'm just about to do Team Russia. Probably as soon as I log off, I'll finish up that one. And man, Russia's weird this upcoming year, man. I did the whole roster, and then I forgot that Nikita Kucherov was still alive, so I had to redo the whole thing. So
Ouch.
Because I was looking at stats and he wasn't on the list, and I was like, and then I did the whole video. I was watching it. I'm like, oh no, I can't post this video and not put Nikita Kucherov, or I'm gonna get blown up. So I have to redo the whole thing. So I'm doing that after I get off this, and you'll see that soon. So if you follow me over there, I've started going live a couple of times a week, and it's a ton of fun. So awesome. That's where you can find me.
That's awesome. You seem to be everywhere.
I try to be.
You guys are stopping by Regina, that's where he is too.
Yeah. Hey, just knock on my door. There's not that many houses there. Just come find me.
He's one of the 3 houses.
Yeah, right.
So Clark, thank you again for joining us today. And Z, once again, thank you for being a part of this. You guys, this is really making our lives a little bit better, just having you guys join us for this, bi-weekly episode of Shooting the Shit. I mean, we're having so much fun. Z and I are 2 guys in our basement. I don't know where you are in your house, Clark, but we're in our basement.
I'm upstairs. Yeah, I'm upstairs.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, sorry. Season upstairs. But anyways, so guys, on that note, thank you guys again for tuning in for another lovely episode of Shooting the Shit. I'm Landsman. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay awesome.